Welcome to the Scottish Property Podcast. This is a show where we aim to educate, inspire and entertain through real life stories and interviews from people in the Scottish property community.
As always, thanks for listening and give us a follow on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember to join us at our monthly networking events on the first Wednesday of every month. Tickets are available on our website. So without further ado, we'll just cut straight into this week's podcast. David Hutton, welcome back to Scottish Property Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff.
I don't know why we say welcome back. I mean, see that fucking much. The seat, it might as well just be Davy's seat.
Nearly get a council tax bill in here.
We thought we'd scrap the property chat today and talk about Land Rovers, because I know you're a big enthusiast, and Stephen's just bought a Land Rover as well.
One.
I've just got my new one sitting out there. It's day one.
Is that what I saw coming in?
Very smart.
It's the Ineos Grenadier I got.
Nice. How is it?
I don't know. It's too early to tell. Literally only picked it up last night, but it's a big lump.
So you wouldn't have got a chance to get out in the snow last weekend with that?
No, I was raging. I was dying to tow somebody.
Have you seen his one?
No, I haven't.
I went as high as I could possibly go, but maybe 1.5 feet, 2 foot of snow, and nothing tickled it. I was like, oh, this is good fun.
What did you buy?
Defender hardtop commercial thing.
VAT reclaimable, tax deductible.
He's got a few stickers on it as well.
No yet.
No? Did you not get some sort of...
Oh, I got my wide
wrap or something like that?
One life, live it, all that stuff. You'll have a roof tent before you know it, what you see.
Good stuff. Right, guys, if you thought you tuned into the wrong podcast here, no, we're actually going to do some property talk and some catch up on what's happening in the news as well. So looking back at the month of November, I pull out the articles. These guys just rip the piss out of me for the next half an hour.
It's because we get them at, what time did we get them last night? 20 to 1 in the morning.
Driving here, yeah.
Aye. So next sent it through. Oh shit.
There's a lot of prep goes into this, and I've now got ChatGPT as well to help me out. So that kind of writes the script as well. So one of the big things obviously that happened at the end of October, I think it was October the 31st actually, and we did a podcast on it about the latest budget. So Labour's first budget. Obviously how that's trickling through into the economy and how it's obviously going to affect us as property investors as well. But just in the general, just looking at a macro picture, Davy, pulling out the news story here, I'm going to read you the headline. Bank of England chief economist warns rise in employers' NI will impact inflation. Now, this is Hugh Pill, chief economist of the Bank of England, warned that the rise could increase inflation and place a marginal strain on the jobs market. And I thought, do you know what? I want to ask Davey about this, because you used to run, it was a pub, you used to run a pub, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And
I'm thinking to myself, looking at my own business, I'm actually not affected because we've only got 4 staff, full-time staff. Once you start getting that kind of, I think 5 and above, it could potentially have an impact. And obviously we know there's businesses out there struggling already at the moment. So how do you feel that this increase in national insurance contributions is going to affect kind of small, medium-sized businesses?
Well, I used to have a business that employed 100-odd people. I would never go back to it because the stress involved in it is massive. But a couple of key words that you just read out there, could and marginal. Could affect, marginally affect. It's a non-story. It's...
But Sainsbury's are saying it's going to cost them 140 million annually.
What did they make last year?
I don't have that figure, but basically,
up all night research.
The question is, like, Labour, the big thing was growth, and a lot of employers coming out and saying, well, this is not the way to go about it. Do you want your companies to invest in the staff, or do you want to potentially see redundancies?
Well, economics is a very difficult subject. For somebody to get rich, somebody has to get poor. That's the way it works. Nobody's in any doubt, without taking a political stance on it, it was a shitstorm that they inherited. Everybody knew that. That's why the Tories get decimated at the election. It was an absolute shit show where your services are in tatters. Now, how do we pay for it? You have to have income to pay for it. Yeah, you can shout growth, but you have to pay the bills now. And the problem that you've got is we live in a world now where the big corporations are not paying their tax in the way that the butcher, baker, candlestick maker used to. The butcher, baker, candlestick maker is now Sainsbury's, who are marginally paying not marginally, they're massively paying less tax than the butcher, baker and candlestick maker would have done. Then if you take it to the next extreme of Amazon, who are paying no tax, but are effectively a million different businesses who used to pay tax, where is your money going to come from? And this is what governments haven't worked out yet. The only people that you can squeeze...
It's the average person, isn't it?
Correct.
So how are you feeling so far then about Labour and their outlook and the policies that they've obviously brought in through the budget and stuff like
I'm
that?
fairly relaxed about it, if I'm honest. I think...
Did you vote for them?
No, I didn't actually.
Do you think that anything majorly affects like their economy and your microeconomy and your business day to day? Like, you know, major changes like a government change or fucking Trump getting in America or these stuff that people jump on the...
Not
the
really.
media
But
jumps on.
if you look at what becomes the big news stories, like let's take it back to the property market. In May and June, as an estate agent, they should be my two busiest months, and they were dead. July and August should be my two worst months other than December, and they were busy till about midway through August. And then the day and hour the kids went back to school, which is when we should get busy again, it died again. It was the complete polar opposite of what it should do. And then you start to look at it and say, why'd that happen? There's an election at the start of July. A little bit of optimism comes in where people think, we've got rid of the bad guys, these new guys are in. I don't think anything's really changed, but I think maybe we're pointing in the right direction. So let's start to do the things that we were putting off doing, and you get that surge, which lasts for about 6 weeks. Then the newspaper story becomes, every old person's going to freeze to death in their house, which is not the case. Basically, you're just turning it into a benefit payment rather than a payment to everybody. So those that need it get it, which is what it should be, in my humble opinion. So the whole story gets blown out of proportion. It's all over Facebook and Instagram and everybody sharing, you know, my granny's going to die kind of thing. It's not the case.
This was the scrap on the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah. Then Stanmer goes to the football.
Means tested.
Stanmer goes to the football. Massive news story. He gets a free pair of specs for Specsavers. Massive news story. In terms of like where that ranks against the PPE scandal or Michelle Moan's 70 million or whatever it is, it's nothing. But the story, the news story, the size of the story is the same. So well, people then think, oh my God, they're just the same as the last people.
And panic again.
They panic again, and the confidence, which is fragile but massively important, suffers.
And I'm assuming the run up to the budget announcement was when I suppose a state agency would get busy coming up after school, go back, people want to move before Christmas. Would have been your busy time, became your quiet time again.
Well, state agency effectively follows school holidays. When the kids are off, nobody moves house. But in the country in general, confidence is super fragile. Now, who's generating the news stories? The Labour are in a mess and in chaos and all of that kind of stuff. It's the press. And who are the press? The press are the corporations. And you're under this corporate control now of like, what you're getting fed is not accurate. But what it does is it feeds a kind of burn the witch type.
I will hold that thought there because I want to challenge you on that, because we were talking earlier about Elon Musk and obviously how you're not a fan. But the role of the mainstream media then and all these kind of headlines that go out there that are just totally blown out all proportion, is that then not more of an argument for having things like Twitter where people can actually go on and tell the other side of the story, to have this, you know, like obviously Elon Musk's whole thing for, you know, buying Twitter was that we need that kind of freedom of speech and that other side of things.
Honestly, you think that's why Elon Musk bought Twitter, for the good of the average person to have free speech?
Why do you think he did?
Control.
He's in control, yeah.
It's control of the media, it's control of the narrative. And it's not that I'm not a fan of Elon Musk's brain. I actually thought, like, not that long ago, Elon Musk was probably on the Democrat side, on the kind of left side of politics. He was very big on the climate change issues, hence Tesla and everything. But it's all turned round about. It's this kind of, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I think the way it's looking just now is that Musk is in charge of American politics and controlling UK politics, and won't stop there. He'll control German politics, French politics. His ambitions are,
world domination,
global
world
control.
domination. Yeah, it's Bon Baddy. It's and I don't really understand it. I don't really understand why people need to have that level of control.
Well, he can't be president though, because he's.
Well, you asked me a question earlier of trade tariffs that Trump's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, say for instance.
Just for listeners, this is obviously, we're now talking about Trump coming into power in February, I think he gets in, and then he's talking about his big thing is tariffs, and that's how he's going to drive the US economy, as he's going to basically tax all
well, you read
imports.
these stories, and they're always look one-sided. If he puts tariffs on China in turn puts tariffs on the US, and the same with the UK. And okay, there's an imbalance there in terms of what China sells to America as opposed to what America sells to China. But that in itself is inflationary for Americans because they need the Chinese goods. And if we didn't learn that through the pandemic of what happens when the supply chain gets cut off, then I don't really know what's going on. But if somebody like Starmer, for instance, stood up. Let's just use Starmer as an example. He's not the right example because he's not the right personality to stand up to Trump and say, do you know what, go fuck yourself. Because what happens then is Musk swings into action. And like the petition that came out last week of like 2 million people signing the petition to get a new general election kind of thing. Well, we're only 4 months after the last general election. A petition saying lots of people don't like you doesn't mean, we have another general election. But why did that petition get the traction that it did? Because Musk retweeted it. Musk commented on it. It went from nothing to boom because of the following and the control that Musk has.
Who is the person to stand up to that though? If you look at UK politics, there's not really anybody.
No, the only other people that could stand up to is like
Nigel Farage, maybe.
Bezos, Zuckerberg. You know,
someone with equal power and money. And
Nigel Farage is right in with him. He's probably having He's probably having dinner with him at the
absolutely
what do they call it, the place that Trump's hit home where it's all happening at the moment.
Mar-a-Lago.
Aye, that's it. And they're all gathering there for dinners and all that. And
it's a really kind of worrying situation. If you go back to traditionally the world's richest man, whether it was Carnegie or Vanderbilt or Astor or whatever, they had control in the areas of railroads or coal or steel or oil or whatever. They didn't have control over everything. And, Musk's wealth now, Bezos' wealth is massively greater than any of these traditional richest guy in the world, even in today's terms. Very difficult to know how to control it because the government now is very much a middle management position compared to these guys. They can basically do what they want. I mean, Musk the other day, he's talking jokingly about buying NBC or MSNBC or whatever it's called because they were pro-democratic. So they just buy it.
Just wipe it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Washington Post, that was, traditionally the Watergate exposers and everything, is now owned by Bezos.
Aye, Amazon.
So
Bezos,
they pulled the traditional nomination that they would have had for the Democrats. They pulled it because it doesn't suit Bezos. Now, it shouldn't be about whether it suits Bezos or suits Musk or suits Zuckerberg, but the world that we live in and the manipulation that they're able to do is massive.
I like getting your thoughts on that because it's
almost impossible to stop.
Quite interesting. I know obviously people listen to this like, right, when are you going to talk about interest rates and property? Right, interest rates. So we've come down from 5.25% down to 4.75%, but this really made me look at it and think really, and again, this goes back to what you're saying about, these headlines come out. What does it really matter? Because the interest rates, the Bank of England base rate, interest rate, unless you've got a tracker mortgage, it doesn't really affect the fixed rate mortgages, because looking at this story here, 5 of the major banks actually hiked fixed rate mortgages when Bank of England's rates actually going down. Mortgage rates are going up. So you can't say, the Bank of England base rate's gone down, that's great for our mortgages, because what they're looking at is it's basically the bond markets and the UK gilt yields and the swap rates as well. So the swap rates, like you say, that's what the lenders are working off of.
On the real terms, it means fucking nothing again, but it's a headline grabbing things. I actually saw a letter on the kitchen table this morning when I left to come in, and it's one of my loans is actually a commercial loan tracked to the Bank of England base rate, and that drop on an 800 grand loan reduced my payment down by £50 a month. Like, it just means nothing in the grand scheme of it, and that's one that is affected.
Let's take a quick break, guys, from today's show to talk about selling your property with Prime Property Auctions. Now, myself and Stephen have both used John and Lewis from Prime in the past, and we can personally vouch for their service. They sell vacant and tenanted property, and you get to control the minimum reserve price so that you're not selling your property for peanuts. They pay for all the stuff like photos, videos, and all the marketing stuff up front, so you're not paying anything from the start, and it's a no sale, no fee. So if you want to check out Prime Property Auctions, then get across to the link on the show notes and speak to the guys. I mean, what it is kind of a big thing for us, like we talked about before, like if you're a homeowner and you obviously you fixed in at like 1.6%, and it's now going up to 5%, and you've already got 2 cars on finance and you've really stretched yourself and all that. We've talked about this in the past.
I'm just interested that you think your market that you're broadcasting to here is interested in the gilt markets and the swaps.
No, my main point is that just because the Bank of England base rate is on the downward, we can't say that.
Well, you've got this
mortgage rates
situation. Guys like you and I are old enough and experienced enough to know that things go up and things go down. The interest rates.
You point at you and Nick there.
Yeah, but you've been doing a bit of moisturising, but cosmetic surgery, and it's. The rates that we have just now are not historically high, they're historically low.
Yeah.
But if you've built a business in the last 10, 15 years...
2%.
Yeah, you think that's the norm. And it's not the norm. The rates that we're at just now, we will hover about forever. They will only come down to the 0% that we've been used to when there's a catastrophe in the economy.
Extreme.
Yeah. But... You've got loads of people that have been to property school that think this is the way you build your business. I spoke to a guy last week. He was probably 24, 25, and he came up to speak to me in the gym. He's a lovely guy, but his whole fixation was on numbers, number of properties that I've got. I've got 5 properties and I want to have 25 properties, and I'm like,
means nothing now.
Pay something off. I went through his whole thing with him, and I said, you need to kind of take your money from that and pay that off. But he didn't get that the market can drop by 30%. And if you build that up to being 20 properties, 30 properties, 100 properties with 30% equity, and the market drops with 30%, that's how you go bust. That's how you go bankrupt. And but they don't understand that because they've never had to deal with it.
They've never seen a downside in the property valuations.
Yeah. And I think we're probably due some kind of correction. I think
we have to.
But then you think if the interest rates are dropping, because we've obviously been up 5.25% and we're kind of going down, then if you think property prices have still been going up over that whole period of time, where they've gone up from 0.1% up to 5.25%, who would have thought that we'd still be going up 5% year on year? So...
Well, but the property market is very much like the diamond market or the Rolex market. It's controlled by the amount of new properties that are brought in. They talk about building 1.5 million new houses. How are they actually going to do that? Unless the government decides that they're going to go and build 1.5 million new council houses, the house builders are not going to do that. They're not going to flood the market with new houses, which is going to bring the prices down. Of course they're not. They're going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They're going to sit there with their land banks.
And the government's not capable of doing it.
They're controlling the price. They're not going to pander to the government.
So again, it's all newspaper and press fodder. That's all it is.
If it's no interest rates are going to cause a property, hikes in interest rates, because we've had that, and it's the property market's not crashed. What is it that's going to cause the next property crash, do you think?
Earnings not keeping up with property values. People not being able to get there.
A lot of the main high street banks have now made it a 6 times multiplier on your salary from 4 historically.
Yeah, and I suppose you can always look at these things and say this is capitalism coming to an end. How far can they milk this? I nearly said milk this golden goose. That would be the wrong expression. I've got a picture in my head. I don't really what I have. You could go to 50-year mortgage, you can go to mortgages that you pass down to your kids and everything, but it is all perpetuating the same thing of the value of the house getting further and further away from the earning capacity. But you've also got the reduction in employment protection and things like that are happening, which makes it more difficult to get the mortgage. Mm-hmm. And for people like you and I, we've all got our property, we've all got our mortgage. You don't see the people that can't get the mortgage. You don't see that section of society that falls out with what you consider to be the norm. Mm-hmm. And when you look at things like the Farage support, the Trump support is probably the best example. Nobody I know, other than the odd lunatic that I'm friendly with, would have voted for Trump. But he got elected twice by people that I don't really come into contact with. And the shock is when you find out that there's more of them than there is of you. It used to be called the underclass in politics. Politicians weren't bothered by them because the underclass, the kind of bad estates, if you like, didn't vote. And if they did vote, they were unlikely to vote for the Tories, if you see what I mean. So no political capital got wasted on there because it was a very small segment of society. Now it's big enough to get Trump elected or Boris Johnson elected on the blue wall in the north of England. You see places like Newcastle and Sunderland and Leeds and things like that voting Tory in Boris Johnson's day.
So going back to the growth in prices outstripping earnings, that's, obviously an issue.
Are we finished with the equalisation of society now, yeah?
That filters through the rental market as well, because obviously we're seeing this actually in the rental market. Obviously lettings is what I concentrate on. And over the last couple of years in Glasgow, we've seen 12 to 14% year-on-year rent hikes, rent inflation. And that could never sustain itself. And the latest City Let report, Q3, very interesting actually. Rental markets show stabilisation with reduced annual growth in Glasgow. I mean, it's only negative 0.5%, but rents are actually coming down now with a correction because it can only go far as what you say, as earnings
as far as the market allows.
People's wages can afford.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we are landlords, so we come from a very specific side of the argument. But typically, the person renting is renting because they can't buy.
They don't want to.
Well, don't want to or can't. Mm-hmm. But it's much more expensive to rent than it is to buy if you could get the mortgage.
Do you think that swings and roundabouts the one that affects the house prices and the rent? Because I'm thinking back maybe 10 years ago where you looked at the rents were, at a certain point where it'd be cheaper to buy, and now it's more expensive to buy. Now it seemed to have swung back the other way. If you look at a rent on a 2-bed flat in Glasgow at £1,000, your mortgage might be 500 or 600. So it actually works out cheaper to buy now again.
I think a lot from a renter's perspective depends on who you're renting from. If you're renting from somebody who's massively dependent on the low interest rate, like for instance, the properties I have no debt on them. So the interest rates going up or down matter a lot less to me than they do to somebody who's 70% funded. And there's an army of people that are renting properties that can't really afford to be renting properties. It shouldn't, if we're really honest, shouldn't be
written in the private rental sector. They should be in social housing.
Yeah, because it's people's lives that are getting fucked about with. It's the person that's renting off you has no security of tenure for the, I'm all for the young person wanting to stand, to start off, but like the guy that I was talking about there, if you want to expand, you're massively vulnerable to market fluctuations, which mean the people that are renting off you are massively vulnerable to your changing business situations.
It's interesting having this conversation with you, because this week alone I've had conversations, and I usually have conversations with guys in their 70s, 80s, they're just looking for their exit. They're now going, do you know what, it's time for me to offload the portfolio, commercial, residential, whatever it is. And this week in particular, I've had a conversation with three. One of them is a really interesting guy. He was like the first guy to build holiday inns in Aberdeen, Glasgow, Edinburgh, because for the players, like really a well-established businessman, built cinema houses and rented them, and he's looking to offload his last days his assets, and it's a really good block in Aberdeen, mortgaged at 74, and with the Aberdeen market being the way it is, there's only so far he can go on it. Then the day after, I'm speaking to someone with 35 commercial units who's got no debt, and he's like, nah, I can come, I can go. And it was just complete difference of people that were the very same age, just with a different outlook to debt. And
yeah, I was always scared by debt. I always wanted rid of it as quickly as I could. And I think
just an upbringing thing, or
I think so, because my brother's 7 years younger than me and kind of grew up in a slightly different world. So my dad started his business when I was 14. So I was skint, but my brother was only 7 at that point. By the time he was 14, my dad's business was doing okay. So he kind of grew up with different expectations. And my son now is 18, and he doesn't understand what it is for the fridge not to be full, or the sweetie cupboard not to have stuff in it, or he understands that it could go away, but he doesn't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's down to what you've experienced. And I'll tell you an interesting story, actually. That Nicola, who runs Finding Your Feet, charity that I've got, is Jewish. Now, she's not practicing Jewish, but her mum was Jewish, and the way it works, if your mum was Jewish, you're Jewish. That's just the way it is. And as you guys probably know, I studied that stuff pretty heavily. I've got a number on my arm there, 19880, which belonged to a girl called Mala Zimmerbaum, who died in Auschwitz. And years ago, when I was doing telly stuff and things, I had this idea that if 6 million people adopted one number, found out who that person was, nobody died for no reason, because the person died, the family died, the street died, the town died, the village died, the county died, everybody died. And almost the person with the least or the smallest story is almost the most important, if you see what I mean. And if I talk to you about Mala Zimmerbaum right now, if we weren't talking about her, we'd be talking about something completely different. Therefore, Mala Zimmerbaum now changes the world in 4 different ways in this room, just by her name getting mentioned. So that was my kind of backstory on it. And I happened to make a comment. I was having lunch with Nick, and I said, I think the whole Trump thing was gathering pace, and the whole fascist stuff was getting bandied about left, right and centre. And I'd said to her that I'm pretty sure at this time in my life, and the principles that I now have and have developed over my lifetime, that I would be the guy that would stand up and say, not in my name. I wouldn't be the part of the general population that would be swayed to Trump or Farage or whoever the bad guy was that was demonising other people. And straight away, Nick, who's a very, very placid personality, said, but that's your white privilege right there. And I was all set to argue with her about, doing the decent thing kind of thing and being the good guy. And she said, nothing bad has ever happened in your timeline. You're the German in your head. You're not the Jew. And she stopped me in my tracks, because she was dead right. I was the guy standing up on behalf of the people who were getting oppressed. In my head, there is no concept that I could ever be one of the oppressed, because I'm white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I'm not black, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Asian, I'm not Catholic, I'm not a woman. And it's the same thing with my son. He can understand that we could be skint, but he can't feel what it is to be skint. We can all understand about the slave trade.
Unless you're
can't
really
feel it.
experience it, you're not going to be able to feel it.
Yeah, it's not in your DNA. It's not in your, if you're a minority, you kind of keep your head down. You don't speak out. You try not to get noticed. Where I would think nothing about challenging a policeman if I thought the policeman was wrong. But would you if you were black?
Do you know what it is? I never really experienced it until I was in America recently, and I got nailed for speeding, and my mate sitting next to me just going, right, watch, keep your hands there, and I says, mate, we're white. Like, and I don't know enough about the politics in it, but obviously from what you see in the media, I knew I was comfortable being, and that was the first time I've ever felt that. There's white privilege. I'm like, aye, we're all right. Like the guy came over and starts chatting away, and I felt it. Boy, the sound. But if you're black, it would have been different.
That, isn't it?
Aye.
If that goes through your mind,
I'm sure it does. We're West of Scotland boys. Well, you're
East.
But you're through here quite a lot. We're patter based. We're we've got that kind of New York go fuck yourself type mouths on us kind of thing. Be very careful over there.
Oh, aye. But you were all right because you're white.
Yeah, I'm white, wearing makeup.
You're fucked.
I'm fucked in multiple directions.
So
you never asked my question about the debt, but I didn't care where we were going off.
I forgot the question was.
Getting back to it. No, the reason why I've got this, getting back to stats.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My stats.
Sorry,
try to give you a viral moment there.
The City Lights Spirits. No, that got me sucked in. It did get me sucked in and thinking. Good. Maybe that's a whole new different podcast that we could do on kind of.
Well, as you get older, you tend to contemplate life more.
Aye.
You tend to be less aggressive in how you drive forward. So like the young guy that I was talking about, this building his portfolio, it's all about build. There comes a point where it's like protect, get rid of debt, consolidate, less risk.
Is that a thing that comes with age? As you get older, you're looking at your debt position, going, okay.
I think so. And I tried to think back about.
Because I mean, at 24-year-old, that guy is, he could be he could pay off up to mortgages and not even be next age.
Well,
but again, it goes back to numbers. Him just wanting the numbers, isn't it? He's wanting the numbers rather than the value or the.
It's all leverage.
You do this. You're an experienced investor, Nick, and you still ask guests the same fucking thing. How many properties you got? And I think I always say it's the most pointless fucking question because, like you say,
it's more from an experience point of view.
It means nothing to.
No, it's no like not doing that to sort of so that they can brag or not brag about how many assets or properties they've acquired. It's to just get an idea of how far into their property journey they are. Do you know what I mean?
Do you not think that's the guy that kind of maybe Dave's talking about? Is they want to have that bragging rights of, I've got so many properties, but if you are leveraged to 75% loan to value,
it means nothing.
It means fuck all.
It's more. I always ask the question more to the point so that I can just find out how much we can actually dig into what they've done, rather than
they're different businesses. If you want to run 1,000 properties on 70% loan to value, it's a big business that you're running.
So that I know, because I don't know what they've done. Sometimes when we've got guests in.
Yeah, and there's so much bullshit out there as well. I remember sitting during COVID, and at that time I had an opportunity, I might have told you this before, an opportunity to franchise quick sale, which potentially could have made me a load of money. And I decided I didn't want to do it because what do I need the extra pound for? To do what? It's like build. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about their inheritance tax situation. And the government's changed the rules on the pensions, and the pensions now come into your inheritance tax thing. But when I actually pushed into it, their net worth had gone up in the 3-year period that they were talking about by something like £400,000 or £500,000. So you're going to have to pay some tax if you don't make some alterations, and there are also alterations that can be made because the government's trying to do is force you down certain routes. So like when something becomes too lucrative, what they want you to do is to invest your money in something else. So it's like, don't invest it in the stock market, invest it in the alternative investment market, and we'll give you a tax break for doing that kind of thing. That is the job of government. But it's always interesting to me that the people that get most stressed about tax are the people who are most able to pay it. And the more able we get as we get older, the more pissed off we get about doing it. It's really strange.
I you said something a few podcasts ago when you were last on it. It was about the pushing, and you said something that hit me. It was like, for you to take advantage of the next recession, you'd never see the benefits of it. And that kind of hit me like, what is the point in keep pushing? Because when you look at your property investment portfolio as a whole, if you can't see the benefit in your lifetime, then why push it? Why not enjoy it?
You could look at it like richest guys in the world, Elon Musk. Like, what is it Elon Musk has got that I don't have? Or what can he do that I can't do? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the better quality of life? Like, how much more do you need?
Musk is a really strange personality. I mean, he's obviously genius, but if you look at it, the Tesla story, then the Cybertruck got released. Who's going to buy the Cybertruck? It's Redneck America. How do I get to Redneck America, who are completely anti-electric vehicles? And his whole political opinions changed overnight based on self-interest. Mm-hmm. And I would much rather that people stayed true to their principle. You hear me arguing against, about things that are negative for me. If they want to charge me a bit more, when the 6% property tax, for instance, affects me, is it right? I can make arguments either way, but I guess the thing with the 6% property tax is that I don't actually pay it. The person I'm buying the property from pays it because it's taken off the bid. And that's the thing that the government don't really understand. Yeah. The person who's paying that is the poorest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You've got a nice looking project on the go at the moment. You just put a video up on your Facebook there. Is it a bungalow? Whereabouts does that look like a nice house? Well, it's going to be a nice house. It wasn't a nice house just now.
Moody's one.
Is it?
Yeah, it's quite a nice one.
Are you doing that up to put back in the market then? Just a flip trade? Is that what you're doing with that?
I don't know, to be honest. I never really kind of look at it. You can
never get that out of you. You're always so wishy-washy. We want to know how much you bought it for, how much you're going to spend, and what it's going to sell for.
Well, I mean, that was an interesting one because it was
he's bored, he just wants to do a project. He's like,
well, I know it makes money as a development.
So that come to you through your estate agency leads. You go out and see that.
Yeah.
It's not for the market?
Well, the majority of my leads come from I want you to buy my property. And in actual fact, 90% of them, that's not the right route for them. The right route for them is for me to sell their property for them in the open market as a bog standard estate agent.
Tell us about this one then, so we can get an insight and a wee bit of background. David Hutton.
It was an autistic gentleman's house who was a hoarder. And he died and left it to his nephew. The property wasn't in a position really that it could go on the open market. It was, things that to the rafters, collections of filing cabinets and playing cards and mechano kits, like the strangest things. And I'm not decrying the man at all.
Do you give the family an opportunity to come and take all that stuff away, or was that never going to happen?
It wasn't going to happen.
So it's literally just need to get a skip.
Yeah, I mean, the family were great to be honest. I mean, but we knew what you're pricing for when you're taking it on. So had I taken that to the open market, Joe Public could not have bought that property. It needed roof, rough cast, kitchen, bathroom, plaster, decor, damp work. Absolutely everything in that property.
You did give a figure on your video, I think, just a rough off the top of your head. So over 100 grand, was it?
80 grand, I think. So that's what I said. It could be 100 grand if you wanted to spend 100 grand, but and I've got people coming back, like trades guys saying, talking shite, mate, it's 35 grand at a push, and you're like, it's a new roof, it's rough cast, it's windows and doors and kitchens and bathrooms.
If you want a date for that, come along and take it on.
Exactly. But you get you get a feel when you go to a property now, whether it's a 20 grand job or a 40 grand job or a 140 grand job, and you're never really far wrong. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not being evasive when I say what am I going to do with it. And I know it will make me money. And the guy that I bought it off knows that it will make me money. Because I always say to people, you know, if I'm going to rob you, I'm going to rob you looking you straight in the eye and telling you how much for. But when the thing's finished, I don't know where the rental market's going to be. I don't know what the property market's going to be. If you think the property market's going to go up 10% in the next year and you can rent it out for 1,500 quid a month, you know, why would you not rent it out for it? I don't need to sell it is the point to get the profit and to generate the next one.
So you in there stripping wallpaper on that yourself, or you?
Do you know I actually was in that one?
Aye.
I've not done it for ages.
Yeah.
And it was strangely therapeutic.
Brilliant. Listening to the Scottish Property Podcast. Brilliant. Get the headphones on.
I did something. I've been on it for about 15 years last week. Painting.
Yeah.
I found it really, really, really therapeutic.
Oh, jeez. Oh, you guys are going back.
Really
I thought I was talking to
this is the one of those
property entrepreneurs here, like, you know, outsource your team.
Drivers.
You're the conductor of the orchestra. You shouldn't be doing these low-level tasks.
Oh man, I've got another one out in a wee flat that I bought out in Salisbury, Shorts direction. And while I was out looking at it, a guy chapped the door that was the next door neighbour and said, "Are you looking for a plasterer?" And I said, "Well, I will be." He said, "Man, if you's a plasterer, I'll phone him, get him right here." And he lives at the end of the street. So the guy arrives, "I'll do it for you." And he gave me a price and that was fine. And I'm all for supporting the local guy and everything.
It's a fucking red flag there, eh?
Yeah.
There's a red flag.
So he phones me up on the Sunday. He's starting on the Monday and says, "I need 7 bags of plaster out there. I've not got a car." I'm like, I'm 40 miles away.
Mate, I'm not coming to get you plaster.
Yeah.
£7 a bag.
So what happened to the car?
So
he just doesn't have one.
So I go get the 7 bags of plaster.
In his new Land Rover.
Take it out. Yeah. Take it out, drop it off, haul it up the stairs, the 25 kilo bags.
With your new shoulder.
Yeah. About 3 days later, he calls me again and said, "In the other 10 bags." I'm like, how can you be out by 130%? And
you tell me you're needing a
experienced plasterer here. I can see where this is going.
Then on the Friday, he got lifted. This morning, as I was travelling here, he's left a voice note for me saying, "I need my money today. Are you coming out here?"
Jesus Christ. Have you actually seen the work yet? Have you started to look at the plastering?
The work to be fair is okay.
Keep going with it.
But I suspect he's been somebody who's worked for somebody and lost his job.
Aye.
And for whatever reason, probably something to do with him getting lifted, but his plastering's okay, but no idea how to run a business.
And
they don't understand that them saving me 100 quid cost me 300 quid and they're running about that. I've then got to do, you know. But sorry, I digress.
No, these are good stories because you're in the trenches here.
I'd get out the way of doing it. I've just always paid people to do it for me. And then I got a new shoulder about a year ago.
You're feeling strong enough to lift up 10 bags of plaster up to the
well, do you know, that was a strange thing. I didn't hate doing it, but I had in my head that I hated doing it. And obviously, historically, I've hated doing it because it hurts.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't hurt. It was kind of liberating. You know,
what's your thoughts quickly, on while we're on the transparency thing and going out and looking at the guy in the eye and say, if I'm going to, I'll rob you or whatever, I'll do it in front of your face or whatever. There's a lot of guys talking about assisted sales strategy. Have you come across this one before where you're going out, you're agreeing a price and then you're not actually exchanging any money, but then you're at the back end. Can you describe it? Because you're an educator, mate.
Yeah, I like assisted sales, but then it's not going to suit Davy's strategy.
Just give us but it's to get his thoughts on the moralities of it and is it ethical, moral?
Yeah,
buy a house.
I suppose if
depends who's doing it.
Yeah, if they wanted more money for it and Davy's like, it doesn't really suit me, they can say, well, the only way I can give you more money is if I'm paying 6.88 on buying it and raising finance and having all these additional costs, I can pass on to you. But you can write up a deed of trust that allows David to go and refurb it and then sell it on the back end. And because you're the owner, they can sell it within 2 months, 3 months, or 1 month.
Why are so many solicitors stay clear of it then?
It's just fucking, because solicitors are just old school and black and white. You're either buying a property or you're not. So a lot of you don't think outside the box, but
yeah,
it can be done.
But you're talking as a property developer.
Yeah.
If
you may want to keep that.
Well, I'm talking as somebody who can buy your property or sell your property for you. Now, the best thing for that person in the assisted sale is for the property to be straight sold for full market value, if you like. Where assisted sales fall through is the guys coming out the property academy that have, they couldn't rent a telly, and they come out and they promise they have to somebody who needs to sell their property now. That's the only reason that inquiry gets them.
And why would that person be in that position? It could be mental health, like you say. They could be a hoarder. They could be...
Yeah, they could have ignored the debt reminder letters from their bank. That happens quite a lot. People bury their head. They don't react to threats from the bank until the bank send them a letter that says, we are going to repossess you.
So these people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
This is the point I'm getting at.
This is the sale that the property you're talking about there with the guy that's inherited it from his hoarder uncle. This is a sale might have suited that guy if he was greedy and wanted a wee bit more money from it. David, you're fucking pulling my pants down. You're giving me $100,000 for this bungalow. I know I could put it on the open market when it's all cleared out, but I can't be asked clear now because it's got to take me weeks and months and months. I can get $150 for it. You can almost say, well, there's an assisted sale opportunity there. I can get a wee bit more money, but here's how assisted sale would work.
Yeah, but you're making property development money without buying a property.
Oh yeah, aye.
So, that...
It's a win-win, isn't it?
What happens to the family?
But then if you come up against me in that situation...
You're buying it, right?
I'm buying it and making the same profit that you are, and the person's getting their money on day one, as opposed to getting it on 3 months down the line. And
they might be getting 20 grand less on day one. They might want 20 grand more. It might be a thing that they need money on. The ones I've always done with assisted sales, it's always they need that bit more money, and you're like, look, it doesn't stack up. Davy's not buying it for that, and I'm not buying it for that because I have to still pay 6%. I still have to buy it. I still have to wait 6 months. I have to go and refurb. I have to have a home cost. Even if it's cash, if I'm putting 100 grand into it, I'll borrow it. You'll use your 100 grand. But if you put your 100 grand somewhere else, there's a opportunity cost of that 100 grand tied up in this property.
Yes,
so the numbers are still the same.
Well, the way you explain it is right, but that's not the way the majority of assisted sales are working. Right. They're working more because people can't afford to buy them.
Right.
So it's getting to property with no money.
Yeah, so effectively, one that I bought one relatively recently for somebody who'd been led down the garden path by somebody who said they were going to buy the property, then didn't come through with the money. You couldn't get a mortgage on it because of a dampness issue. So the plan was to do the development as an assisted sale, sort the dampness issue out, then it was mortgageable, then the whole thing. But it didn't work out, and I got involved in it because a lawyer phoned me and said, Davy, can you sort this out? Now, somebody like you doing it, you're an experienced property person, you know what you're doing. The problem is when it's not experienced property people.
Somebody's getting dragged down the garden path.
Now, you guys, who are yourself around the property network stuff, you know that it's a networking thing. There's people out there with no money trying to find something, to source something, to pass it on to somebody else, and they get a fee, and that somebody else passes it on to somebody else who can get the mortgage in place and whatnot. It's a...
There's something that doesn't sit well with me. It's like you say, it's an experience thing. If you know what you're doing and you're absolutely confident in what you're doing, then that's fine. But if you're going in there and it's your first property deal, again, it's like how much, say that you've got that kind of, I don't know, that vulnerable person who's in a really low point in their life, debt-ridden, they've turned to alcohol, they're now an alcoholic, they're in that depression.
They are needing that quick sale, aren't they?
And then the family get wind of it as well, and you're like,
well, that
person's come along and robbed the house.
It's a thing that's always at the back of my mind, is what comes back on you. If you rob somebody, it's going to come back on you somewhere down the line.
But then you would say that that's providing them with a solution.
I'm not saying you're robbing somebody.
But I kind of look at this. It kind of comes back to the same comment that you said. Look them in the eye when you're robbing them. If you're not robbing them, you're giving them a complete, honest, transparently open. This is what I'm doing.
I'm going to buy this for 100 grand. I'm going to spend 30 grand on it. There's 6 grand in second property tax. There's 2 grand in legals. There's a home report to sell it on, and I'm going to make 20 or 25,000 at the end of it.
Yeah.
And if you end up making 30,000...
Do you put that in writing?
No, but Generally speaking, no, I don't. But I don't put an awful lot in writing other than the contract to sell the property.
I was getting asked this on a workshop I just did 2 weeks ago, and there was just a small group, 3 or 4 people. They were very much. I like doing these small workshops because it's people that are refinancing their property. They've got 100 grand. They're ready to build their portfolio. They've got some cash, and they're now trying to get the education to do it right. Now they were talking about the discounts that I'm getting. Oh, you've done this case study. How did you get that for that example? And I, after answering their questions a few times, I actually came to the real realization that each time I've got a huge, massive deal like maybe the one you're talking about, I should try to help them. You try to solve their problem. I'm actually coming from a genuine place of interest. Nick asked you the question, what was the situation? Well, the autistic gentleman was a hoarder, got past his nephew. You've asked the question because you've got a genuine compassion to help that person, whether it be, I'm going to quick sell it, or I'm going to put it through the agency. I'm going to buy it off you. I'm going to put it through that, or I'm going to pass it on to somebody that does it. You'll figure a solution that suits them. And when I was asked that question, it was genuinely, each time you spent time with them, you've asked the question, you've been open, transparent. Look, if you put this in open market, you can go to Davy, he'll put on his auction, he'll probably get you 40 grand more than I can even give it to you for help yourself. And he's like, no, I'm just willing.
A lot of it is almost a life coaching job. The one that we're talking about in Woodiesburn there, the lad that I bought it off, it's a lovely guy. He's a driving instructor. And the conversation goes to, what are you going to do with the money that your uncle's left you? And he said, a lot of the places that I'm doing my teaching people to drive are Hamilton, Motherwell, Wishaw. They're deprived areas. And there's a lot of kids that just can't afford to get driving lessons, but that's their passport out of where they are. He said, that was my passport out. He said, I'm going to use the money to go and subsidise or pay for people's... And do you know what? The guy nearly brought me to tears because he was so genuine.
That's cool. Yeah.
And so I then have a conversation.
You felt that was proper authentic stuff as well?
Absolutely 100% authentic. Not interested in money. And he was a guy who was wide open to being robbed.
He knew what was going on.
He knew what was going on, but he's not interested in money.
Yeah,
you could have probably driven him down.
I could have taken a lot more out of that property than I did, but it will come back and bite you in the long run. Yeah. So you then have the conversation with him that I don't think you should put all that money into you can make a hell of a difference putting some of the money into teaching some kids to drive, because it's just your labour really that we're talking about. But use that money, pay your mortgage off. You can clear your mortgage on your own house. That makes your life easier, and
then you can give back more.
The thing about you, Davy, is it's impossible for you to fly under the radar as well. I mean,
but that's deliberate, Nick. It's completely deliberate.
It's 100%.
You put yourself out there, and you're there to be shot at. And I tell you, if there's somebody watching this that can come back and say that I robbed them somewhere down the line, bring it on, folks. Because it's not there.
Yeah.
And it takes you a long time to build that reputation. But then eventually, what happens is somebody that you bought a house off of says to somebody else, and the word of mouth thing then carries through. And
I think that conversation there is just a great value for people who, especially, are just starting out as well. But that's just blown away my whole market update and the stats. Just like absolutely, who wants to talk about stats?
Sorry, Nick, go back to it.
Right, we're going to need to rip through this. We've got 5 minutes to get through the news now, right? So I want very short answers from you. Going back to the rents, right? The reason I brought this up because Aberdeen are actually doing brilliant on rent inflation, right? Let me read you out. Edinburgh up 3.4%, Glasgow down 0.5%, Aberdeen up 4.4%, Dundee up 1.5%. So Aberdeen has got the strongest rental growth.
I'd love to say that's happening and starting to.
It's happening.
I don't know.
It's not
quite happening
on the ground. No happening for you.
No,
I think Aberdeen market's a funny one just now. I've got property sitting there languishing, doing nothing. I spoke to you about it a while ago. It's in a nice area. I think it's gone from something like 190 grand at the height to 120.
Aye.
That's sales. I'm talking about like rents.
That's massive drop.
I think this is where the Aberdeen market recovers from, because your rent income, like what I'm noticing from like even just the wee run-of-the-mill one-bed flats, is the rent market's increasing so much that investors will go look at that and go, I don't need any fucking fancy below market value. I can buy a 60, 70 grand flat and get 11% return in Aberdeen right now. You're not getting anywhere else, and that might drive the prices back up, and then the owner-occupiers coming, I think, will help as well.
UK house price, Scottish house price data, still chugging along, up 5.7%.
It's 5.7% on average, though.
On average.
So, like, what I'm seeing is good areas going up more than that.
Yeah.
Not so good areas actually being flatlining and negative.
Yeah. Okay. There's some interesting research out for build to rent. So this was the kind of government's sort of idea that they had to solve the housing crisis and the housing emergency, was they were going to get all these pension funds and big institutional investors, and they were going to build up all these big.
I love the enthusiasm in your face when you say there's some interesting stuff, and simultaneously we both glazed over.
People need to know about this stuff. we are being absolutely vilified by the general public and politicians as private landlords because of this housing emergency. And
you might be getting vilified for that. I'm getting vilified for looking like a cross between Willy Wonka and the Tiger King.
But they don't know you're a landlord. They will now. Now that they know you're a Willy Wonka landlord.
Imagine the hate he'd get on
the pirate landlord.
Yes.
Right, so build to rent, it's no happening. Basically, it's totally stalled because of rent controls. And there's a guy called Dr. John Boyle, works for RETI, and RETI do the research, and they've basically said that there's 14,000 build-to-rent homes in Scotland are currently stuck in development, or not development. I don't think they're proceeding now because they've basically pulled out of Scotland. They're putting their money in. These big pension funds are now putting their money into Manchester, all the big English cities. This represents a 2 billion in potential construction. So massive impact on the economy, and obviously we're not getting anywhere building enough houses. So
who's the article from?
That's RETI.
That's a RETI one. Okay.
RETI's research. This guy John Boyle, who we're actually going to get in the podcast, he does a lot of good work actually. If you're into stats, which you're clearly not.
That's quite a hit though, isn't it, on the Scottish?
I mean, it's ground to a standstill. You're familiar with Glasgow City Centre and all that. You'll see over the Kingston Bridge, the down at the Daily Record there. Yeah. That's all built to rent living. Now, whether or not that's certainly not going to solve the affordable housing crisis, because a 2-bedroom flat's costing you £1,700 a month. The old Pitt Street police station, that's a build to rent development as well. You know, it's the kind of modern, you've got all the facilities of the gym, the communal areas, the co-working the co-working space where you can hang out
London market,
your laptop and all the rest of it. So where I would like to see it going is massive scale family house developments. They do this in America where it's all institutional investment, but it's like 3-bedroom terrace, semi-detached houses on the outskirts. That's where we need the housing.
Of course it is.
But fundamentally, it's not going to stack up commercially for house builders. If they can build a big, tall stack of flats worth 200 grand and they're getting 200 flats in it.
Do we need more flats? So we don't need more city centre flats, do we?
6 houses in it.
You know, so just rattling through it again. Housing Minister announces amendment to proposed rent controls. So at the moment, just to bring people up to date, this is the housing bill, the new housing bill that's going through Parliament. And the whole point in the
Scottish Property podcast listeners are now getting the actual good value at 55 minutes in because we just play that shite.
Exactly, the last 5 minutes. No, there's better
value. It's entirely because of me that they've stuck around for 55 minutes to get this bit of hot news from you.
The best value.
If you just thrown this out in the first 5 minutes, that would have been him gone.
The best values in Davy's stories about the Jews, but This is why we love getting you in. Anyway, the Housing Minister has announced that they've provided a little bit more clarity about how these rent controls, how about these proposed renting controls are going to take shape. So they're now saying that if they identify an area that rents are going out of control, the local council can step in and they can put the cap on, and it's going to be Consumer Price Index, CPI, the inflation rate, plus 1%, with a maximum increase of 6%. So if the CPI is at 8%, then obviously it's going to be capped at 6%. Now, who knows how they're going to...
similar to the rent pressure zone that they've already got in place?
Aye.
Just pulling that apart though, why does it need to be CPI plus 1%?
Because they have to have
just CPI.
They have to have some sort of figure, some sort of indicator on where the economy is going, isn't it?
Well, it used to be when I started off that your lease with the tenant would have said, I think at that point it was the RPI retail price index that was used. So you could get an inflationary rise on it every year, but why do you take an inflationary rise plus 1%?
I guess it's because they're trying to make it fair to the landlords to say that.
Because the rises to landlords are larger rises, because 1% going on your interest rate is 16% going on your mortgage, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole debate, isn't it? They're trying to find the balance of, like, they don't want to deter investment. They don't want all the landlords leaving because they need the private rented sector.
Exactly. And the reason they have to do that is because you can't claim your mortgage interest against your rental income. So it's not a balanced playing field there. I don't know.
Aye. So anyway, there's huge protests and all that going on at Parliament at the moment, and they're outside with the tenant unions and stuff like that. They're wanting obviously 0%. So we'll see how all that passes. It's a hugely, I mean, it's got very political now, the whole housing thing, and it's obviously massive. 2 seconds finishing off.
Everybody needs stability. You can't have the volatility in the markets that. To go back to what we were talking about earlier on, my tenants have experienced much less volatility than the person that has the portfolio on the 70% funding, and totally on a necessary basis on their part. The rents had to be raised as soon as they could be raised. I'd rather take the longer view and have good tenants, and if they want to stay there for the rest of their life, they can do.
Yep. So, I mean, I was at the Scottish Letting Day through in Edinburgh recently, and the Housing Minister was there. We want to try and get Paul McLennan on.
It's a thing, yeah, the Scottish Letting Day.
Oh, it's a big thing.
It's a day for everything now.
Not your cup of tea? Do you want to come to the next one next year with me?
Do you know what? The long winter nights just fly in.
You get a nice bacon roll. Right, so we're getting Paul McLennan, hopefully. I managed to connect with his people. He didn't actually speak to me directly. He was there hovering about with his entourage, and I managed to grab one of them. You've been well connected in the Scottish Government, Davy. Surely you can get us an interview with the Housing Minister.
Do you know what? These meetings are not difficult to get. Phone them up.
No, I've emailed him. I think he will come on. I've tagged him on Twitter as well, but obviously... Aye, it's just getting him to come here.
Well, we'll go there.
Go to the Scottish Parliament. Aye, we'll take
these are one of the things that I've learned as I've got older, that these people are. It's us that stops them being attainable. Go to them.
Yeah.
Ask them and you'll get.
I think he's based in Edinburgh, the East Coast.
He's a MSP through Lothians.
Nick doesn't go like west of the east of the.
He's like Wishaw. Well, I'm not travelling to Wishaw. Right, but David Hutton will always give us time and travel to Wishaw with his new Land Rover and his 12 bags of multi-finish plaster in the back.
It's an Ineos.
Oh, is it no? Looks like a Land Rover.
It does look like a Land Rover. That's the whole point of it.
Oh, right. Is it a cheap Chinese? Is it a Chinese replica?
Radcliffe. It's what the Defender should have been.
I know nothing about cars, as you can tell. Thank you for joining us, Davey. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, Davey.